Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are now becoming your daily Tottenham Hotspur podcast. If you want to the very first time, you can find us on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on X. We're on Facebook. And, of course, we are on Blue Sky too. I know many joke that it's becoming the late word on Spurs. And for those out there that don't know about my life, I'm happy to fill you in very quickly. I've got two boys under the age of 5, and they don't like nighttime. They just don't want to sleep. And listen, it's a battle in our house. We try and get there, we do. Joining me for this edition of Last Word on Spurs in this daily transfer update, I'm joined by the wonderful Mitch Fretton. Mitch, been lovely to see you. I know I missed you on the last one because I was holidaying it up, tanning up. How are you, bud? Lovely to see you.
You were. You look lovely and bronzed, Ricky, compared to me. I've got like a white screen in the background, so it's not doing me any favours, but it's quite dark in my flat. But no, I'm fantastic. It's nice to be on. It feels like quite a little intimate session, this, just me and you. But I'm looking forward to it. And I'm very jealous of your holiday. But we all missed you, obviously, and it's good to have you back. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into everything we've got on the cards tonight. It should be fun.
I can make you feel a little bit easier, Mitch. I don't know if 2 kids chasing around the pool under the age of 5 is for you. So, mate, listen, I wouldn't change it. I would not change it for the world, but at the same time, it's good to be home. It's good to be home. Many would argue the holiday has just started. Let's just see. Listen, has the holiday started for Tottenham in the transfer window? I think we know right now that we would like the club to be more active than what they are. Of course, we are providing you these daily transfer updates. Look, let's be honest about it. We would like the club, as I mentioned, to be more active than what they are. We'll be bringing you an update of where Tottenham are in their pursuit of Morgan Gibbs-White and the latest in relation to that. We understand the club are working on a bid for Joao Palhinha, of course, of Bayern, and we'll be updating you with that. The big news really across the last 24 hours or so is the fact that Heung-min Son is more likely than ever to be leaving Tottenham Hotspur this summer. We'll be bringing you more on that throughout the show. We do understand also there's a chance that Alfie Devine could also leave the club. Alfie Devine being eyed by Millwall. We'll be coming on to that in this show. And when it does leave for some of the other youngsters Tottenham have around their camp this summer. And a target that has been floated around a lot for Tottenham throughout this summer so far, and that's Yoan Wissa. We understand that he's informed Brentford now. He wants to join Newcastle United and nobody else. Of course, we know of the fact Tottenham had a long-standing interest in Wissa throughout the summer. They wanted to reunite him with Thomas Frank, but it appears that it's not going to happen. But we'll start with the latest on the Morgan Gibbs-White saga, the on-off nature of this transfer, and we'll bring you up to date if we can. But before we do, of course, if you can for us, guys, keep liking, subscribing to Last Word on Spurs. We'll be bringing you the daily updates, providing there's enough daily content to bring to you. I think that's the key. And of course, Mitch has got his own YouTube channel. We please urge you, if you can, to go and hit a like, go and hit a subscribe over to Mitch. Of course, Mitch Fretton, of course, on YouTube and on TikTok. You'll find his information in the description below. But Mitch, if we start with really what we know to be is the headline drama of the summer in the Morgan Gibbs-White on-off saga and where we currently stand as of right now, because we have had an update in this last 24 hours. And that, as things stands at the moment, is that the midfielder has now arrived with Nottingham Forest in Portugal with his teammates after originally not flying out with the squad earlier due to personal reasons. Now, we know Forest have got a couple of friendlies coming up on the respective Saturday and the Wednesday. And look, we know the situation as things stands at the moment is that Forest are claiming that an illegal approach was made. However, there's a nature of the confidentiality of the clause being breached, which again, at the moment, we understand Spurs, from what we're being told, submitted a bid worth the exact amount to trigger that release clause. And now we are in the hands, really, of it becoming a legal matter. We've had no real comment between the two clubs. We've had a lot of speculation in relation to what is actually happening right now. But given it is a legal matter and the lack of information, I know there's a concern out there, Mitch, that the longer this goes on, maybe the more unlikely it is to get done. But what's your take on the fact that Gibbs-White has now joined up with the Forest squad in Portugal?
I think the main takeaway from that whole sort of point is that nothing is imminent in terms of the Spurs deal. And this is the issue with the legal side of things and threatening legal action and putting Spurs on legal notice and whatever it is. Nothing when it comes to being done through a legal process is done quickly. And, you know, I think we're witnessing that firsthand with just the lack of news, whatnot, or how slowly things are moving. You know, we've seen the same news recycled pretty much with different wording for nearly 2 weeks now since it was first announced that we wanted to get him, and I just think the fact that he's now gone out to their pre-season tour, of course he's being a professional, and you admire that to a certain extent, but I know from chatting to a lot of people and doing, you know, my own live streams and stuff, that it's getting really, really frustrating for a lot of people, which is also understandable. Like, you know, I'm reading through the comments and almost every single one is, you know, Morgan Gibbs-White stuff is so frustrating. We should move on to other targets and so many other different points as well. And it's completely understandable because we obviously were treated to the idea that we were getting those 2 big deals over the line within the space of a couple of days of each other. So to have that snatched away from us when we were on that sort of euphoria of announcing Kudus and then expecting Gibbs-White to come through the door as well, to now be waiting a couple of weeks down the line and having no update whatsoever. Like, we don't even know still if we have done something wrong, which is the concerning thing for me. And I guess you could argue that with the legal stuff, it's a lot more confidential and a lot less is going to be said by journalists because it's more sensitive and you can get in a lot more trouble for it. But as just fans of the club and wanting to see Tottenham sign good players, which Morgan Gibbs-White is, it's just getting more frustrating as the days go by, which, by the way, is what I think Nottingham Forest and Marinakis wants. He wants Spurs fans to get frustrated. He wants Daniel Levy to get frustrated, Johan Langer. And ultimately, I think they want us to turn away and move on to something else and just leave Gibbs-White alone. So, yeah, I honestly, I'm so clueless as to how long this is going to take. And I'm starting to think it may take right up until the deadline, to be honest with you.
Are you concerned, Mitch? Because I know, again, we're going to come on to Joao Palhinha very, very shortly. I know there's a feeling out there that this whole situation, for some, not always, massively derailed Tottenham's transfer window. Are you of that opinion that this has really destabilised what the plan was for the window? Do you have that feeling?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, one of the small snippets of news that we have had over the last couple of days is that Spurs are focused on finalising this Gibbs-White transfer. So I know there have been the rumours about Palhinha and Wissa and a couple of others as well, but I do think it's very, very clear that Gibbs-White remains a priority. And we're kind of stuck because of that, because we don't know how long it's going to take. You know, I think most of us are hanging on to the idea that no news is almost good news when it comes to this whole breach in the confidentiality of the release clause, etc. And others are pointing to the fact that, you know, people go away on tours and they still leave the club. But we getting frustrated, aren't we? It's just we need to strengthen in other areas of the pitch as well, which is the issue. And I'm sure we'll come on to talk about that as well. But the fact that we're sort of only taking it one deal at a time is where I think it's a little bit naive, considering there's 3 weeks left until the season starts. We've got that massive Super Cup game against PSG, the opportunity to win another trophy. And you know, we fly off to pre-season, don't we, at the end of the week next week over to Asia. And ideally, if you ask any manager, they'd say they'd want all their business done by the time you go on those pre-season tours. I know it's not a reality for most clubs, but it seems a little bit incompetent and a bit naive from my perspective. That's all.
I just wonder, Mitch, you know, you said it there yourself. We've obviously going to be going to this pre-season tour in Asia in a matter of days now. Of course, we've got that double header to come at the weekend with Luton and Wycombe, respectively. You know what? Obviously, just the one high-profile signing through the door so far in Mohamed Kudus. How do you feel at the stage of this window, bearing in mind that it is only the one high-profile player that's come in so far? We know, of course, they brought Kota Takai through the door. He's had his work permit received. He's been training with the squad as well. Disappointed probably not to have made his debut, of course, at the weekend. The fact Luka Vuskovic took his opportunity, where does that kind of leave him in the pecking order? What's the gauge for you, Mitch, on kind of the fact that we've only made the one significant high-profile signing so far?
Well, we know that it's not enough. And we always go through cycles, I think, as Spurs fans, whereas we sort of like, we get our hopes up. You know, a few weeks ago, we had all the reports about potential investment coming in and more funds being made available. And then that was actioned with the Gibbs-White bid and the whole saga to do with that. But then everything's gone quiet. I think the least people expected, if we're going to wait and try and get this Gibbs-White deal sorted out, is that we move for other players in positions we need to, or at least focus on something like outgoings. Like, are we going to ship Bissouma out? Are we going to sell Richarlison? You know, players like that are sort of on the fence, and we may need to sell anyway before we bring in players in those areas of the pitch. So it's just like, you know, we're a massive institution, a massive football club. It's not like the department, the scouting department and the directors department is small and we can only work on one deal at a time. Like there's surely scope to be able to do multiple things at once. And, you know, how long do you wait before it's too late, essentially?
Well, that was going to be my next question in terms of waiting. I mean, you've said there this could even drag to the end of the window. Do you feel the fact that we're going to come on, because we know there's been a report of maybe an alternative target? We can bring him into the show now. There's been this almost suggestion from Paul O'Keefe, friend of the show, of an alternative to Morgan Gibbs-White in Harvey Elliott, of obviously, of course, Liverpool. I mean, we don't know really at this stage how open Liverpool are to selling him to Tottenham. We understand he would be potentially the alternative to Gibbs-White if Tottenham are to turn their attention elsewhere. I mean, I can see when I saw the reaction on X that there was a degree of, is this guy good enough for Spurs? Would he be the right kind of fit in terms of the comparison to, of course, Gibbs-White? Where do you stand at for you in regards to Harvey Elliott, Mitch, in relation to this potential link of being a direct alternative to Gibbs-White?
Do you know what? It's one of those ones. You know, when you get a link to a player, you think and you have that initial like gut reaction to how you would feel if we signed him. I'm on the side of I don't fancy it at all, to be as a direct alternative to Morgan Gibbs-White. Absolutely not. I mean, they're different types of players. I don't think Harvey Elliott is on the level that Morgan Gibbs-White is, to be honest, and I don't think he would have as much as an impact on this Spurs squad under Thomas Frank that Harvey Elliott would. You know, I think Harvey Elliott is a really good little player, right? And I think that, you know, he's obviously just won the Premier League with Liverpool. Obviously, played with England in the Euro 2021 finals this summer, and he is probably, you know, worthy of being the main man at a Premier League club. But does he? I mean, let me ask you: do you think signing Harvey Elliott makes us a much better team? And is he, you know, someone that will come in, go straight into the starting 11 and be a real standout performer for us?
I don't think he shifts the dial as much as what I think Morgan Gibbs-White would. I think Morgan Gibbs-White, we've seen at Forest, has got the ability to play a multitude of positions. I think when I look at someone like Gibbs-White in comparison to Harvey Elliott, I just feel with Gibbs-White, there's another level to go there that we haven't seen yet. And I'm not saying that Harvey Elliott hasn't got that in him, but I feel with Frank, by the fact that we've tracked Gibbs-White throughout the whole summer so far, the fact that we know that he's been a Thomas Frank target for beyond his time at Tottenham, it goes right back to his days at Wolves where that interest was there. I think clearly this is a player that Thomas Frank really, really wants in Morgan Gibbs-White. And I think the key thing for me, for any manager that's at Spurs, which I don't know if you agree, my worry is that some of these managers in the past have not got their key number one targets through the door. I think we know Ange really wanted Conor Gallagher. You know, I think a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when he first came to the club, they never got him. I mean, you could argue it would have been difficult to do business with Chelsea. There's that argument there. But I think with someone like Gibbs-White, because of the nature of the, as I've touched upon, multitude of positions he can play, his adaptation, his flexibility, and how he would really, I feel, suit Tottenham's system, may get even the best out of Brennan Johnson, for example. You know, the likes of Glenn of Archie Gray working alongside him in due course. I think we do know Gibbs-White seems to be the player Frank desperately wants. So my worry would be that we go for the alternative, and that isn't a Thomas Frank signing, that's a club signing. And that's where I've got my concern, which I don't know if you feel the same on that.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, both English, obviously. Yeah. I think there's a clear desire from the club this summer to deal with either the homegrown or the club trained issues. Yep. And make sure we're sorted in terms of Champions League squad, and just making sure we're ticking all of the right boxes. And that's the only way that I can see how we could ever pivot from Morgan Gibbs-White to Harvey Elliott. That it doesn't make sense as a move to me in terms of what both players offer. And, you know, you grow attachments to these players when you're linked with someone and you think you're going to sign someone like we have been with Gibbs-White, and he's a very good player. You grow this sort of like desire and attachment to them. You're like, oh, if we don't get him now, it's going to be really, really annoying. And
all the compilations, Mitch, we've seen as well. I think that's the key. You see the link-up play that he's had with Brennan Johnson in the past, and I think you said it so well. I think, that attachment has grown there. It's almost like you've been given a present, as I think one of the previous guests said on the show in the week. It's been taken back away from you. I think for all what's gone into this now with Gibbs-White, my worry would be that we don't get it done. We go for an alternative, and that alternative isn't up to the required level. And my worry is, again, many were suggesting this, that if it isn't Gibbs-White, who would it be? I mean, is there anybody else out there that you feel that Tottenham aren't looking at, that they should be looking at in terms of that player profile? Because it just feels at the moment, Maddison, we know, is a great player on his day. I think the thing with Maddison that we've seen in the Tottenham shirt is that he can have days where he's 8 out of 9, and then he can have days where he's 3 out of 4. And I think lacking that consistency has been one of the biggest problems for Tottenham in terms of that creative area of the pitch. And I think that's why with someone like Gibbs-White, I still feel there's more to come from him. I don't think it's the complete finished article, but you can just see that, with all due respect to him, put him in a team with better players. And I'm going to put my nose out here and say there's been a better manager in Frank. I don't mean that disrespectfully to Nuno, but I think a manager in Frank that has shown that adaptation, that development, that real, as we've seen with Brentford, key component of improving so many players throughout his time there. You can rattle off 5, 6, 7, 8 players that have improved. I mean, look at the amount of players that have left Brentford this summer. You might say that's not of a consequence of Frank. They just want to move elsewhere, but they've earned that move elsewhere because of what they've done under Thomas Frank. And again, that would be my biggest worry for me at the moment. Now, if we don't get the deal done for Morgan Gibbs-White, the alternatives out there, are these the players that Frank wants? Would that be your biggest worry as well, Mitch?
Yeah, I think so. I think Morgan Gibbs-White is quite unique in terms of what he offers. He offers a lot of flexibility in terms of positions that he can play on the pitch. Obviously, we know that he can be a great advanced midfielder, create plenty of chances. He's great at running with a ball. But then the defensive work as well is probably one of the main reasons why Thomas Frank loves him. Such a relentless runner, such a hard grafter. And, we need profiles like that in our team. And he's physically strong as well. So there's so much to love about him. And I think you're right. I cannot, off the top of my head, I'm sure some people that are watching live in the comments will have a few names for us, but I cannot, off the top of my head, pick out someone that offers at least similar to him. And particularly because we're looking in that Premier League proven sort of market this summer of bringing a bit more experience at that level into the team. I think he fits everything perfectly. And it's probably half the reason why everyone's so frustrated, to be honest.
Do you think, Mitch, just, you said there, this is one we might have to, we might see dragged to the end of the window. Would you be comfortable with that if Tottenham are obviously doing business in other areas? We're going to come to Joao Palhinha in a second. But are you happy for the fact that we do park this particular situation that we've got right now and allow it to drag on throughout the summer and don't address that area of the pitch? I mean, if I said to you before the start of the window, that creative area of the pitch is something that we need to do as a priority, would you have agreed to that? Because I know many fans out there feel that we need to identify and really, I think, find a solution for that number 6, which we're going to come on to. We know it feels like the club are moving to a solution for that number 6. I think many also feel that the left-back area is an area that the club do need to look to strengthen. Would the area of creative midfield in that middle of the park have been an area that before the window would have opened, you would have identified as being a key area Tottenham must have improved this summer? They've got, obviously, of course, Kulusevski coming back from injury soon. They've got Maddison there. Do you feel the options they've got enough there if they weren't to pursue Gibbs-White?
Potentially on paper, but as we know, we can't keep a lot of players fit at the club. Kulusevski's obviously coming back from a very serious injury. Madders can't stay fit for the entire season. And our biggest issue last season is that we didn't have enough depth to be able to compete in all competitions because of the injuries that we picked up. So I think it's always important to have multiple creative outlets. One of the most important areas on the pitch, making sure that the team is ticking in that final third. And I just think, considering the links that we had before the market was opened as well, obviously the Eze links, the Xavi Simons links, and whoever else it might be that I might have forgotten. I don't know if I would have labelled it exactly a priority, because I think most people would have agreed that number 6, more defensive midfielder and maybe a left back were perhaps higher up on that list. But I don't think any Spurs fan would have gone into this transfer window and said that we don't need significant sort of work doing to the squad in terms of recruiting in multiple positions. I do think that creative player falls into that category.
Okay, well, look, we'll update you obviously when we know more in the situation, and it feels that at the moment, I know for many out there, they would like a conclusion to this very, very quickly. It just feels in the nature of Tottenham, and Mitch, I won't age you as well. I know you've been around a lot of Tottenham transfer windows, even though you might not look like it. We do know with Tottenham there's a tendency for these things to drag, but it just feels that there's going to have to be some form of a decision, whether it's now, whether it's towards the end of the window. I know many fans out there want that conclusion to come very, very soon. We're going to squeeze in our first break of the show for our listeners on audio. We have got only over 4,000 of you that are watching the show live. Thank you so much for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. Believe me, I can tell you, me and Mitch would love to be here providing the daily transfer updates, giving everybody out there in the Spurs community real positive, hopeful news that we are moving and identifying in the market players that are going to really take this club to the next level. But it just feels at the moment that I know there's that feeling out there, Mitch. I don't know whether you agree. A lot of the clubs around us seem to be moving. They are making, can I say giant strides or giant leaps? But they're certainly making moves that maybe have a degree of concern for us in terms of where this leaves us. When you look at the clubs around us at the moment, obviously Arsenal, the Enquiries deal is almost, but none of it hasn't already been announced by the time many will catch this show out in the playback. The fact that, United have brought Cunha in. They've, of course, brought Mbeumo in. You look at Chelsea with that coming through the door. They've had Joao Pedro coming through the door. Liverpool, Hugo Ekitike's come through the door there. Their most recent addition. There's now talk of Isak looking to leave Newcastle. Where does that leave him? Where does he go? Are you concerned by the fact that, I know, look, we finished 17th last season. I know me and you both feel we're not going to finish 17th again. Hopefully not. But the clubs that we want to be around, are you concerned that those clubs are already making significant moves in terms of moving away from us, in terms of them being our competition?
Yes, 100%. And it's like, I don't know, I'm sitting here, I said it the other day, it's like, I feel quite jealous. It's like, I don't know if you've ever seen that meme on social media where you've got like, I think it's a SpongeBob meme where he's stuck inside the house and there's two of them running around having fun outside. Feels like we're stuck inside and everybody else is outside having fun. Like loads of big deals are going on. People are getting what they need to get done, but we're just lagging behind and we're stalling. And it's something you mentioned that we've become very used to over the years. And yeah, it's just frustrating, especially when you consider, and I don't like using our rivals as a comparison because we're all in very different situations. We know that Chelsea have spent, like, they've got an unlimited budget every single year since their takeover. But it's more the speed at which these clubs get the deal done. It's the fact that Chelsea can go out and in the space of a day or 2 days get a deal for Xavi Simons and Jarell Hato done and pretty much sealed. I know Arsenal waited a long time to get the Gyökeres deal over the line, but Liverpool as well, they get it done very, very quickly. And it's just a case of these teams are more concerned about bringing success on the pitch. And if that means they have to pay a little bit more to accelerate the deal and give the manager and the teammates the most amount of time that they can to really embed these new players so they're ready and raring to go for the start of the new season, then fantastic. But I just don't feel like we operate that way. And maybe that's harsh to sort of link to the Morgan Gibbs-White deal because it's not necessarily all our fault. And there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. But other areas as well, like I've already mentioned, and it's becoming quite tiring just saying the same thing over and over again about it. But there's no reason whatsoever why we can't go and sign other players. We need to make a decision on who our targets are and then just go for it. Like I know it's easy to sit here and say that. Yeah. A lot of work goes on behind the scenes in terms of getting transfers done, but season's in 3 weeks and pre-season's well underway now. Our rivals are getting better, they're getting stronger, and we are kind of, Kudus is a good deal and I think it'll be brilliant for us, but we're still kind of in that area where we haven't massively improved. I don't know if that's unfair.
I think that's fair. I totally agree. I just feel we're in this position where that I would have hoped at this stage in the market, given what other clubs have done, we would have been more advanced. And I think the problem I've got, Mitch, is that history tells me that, and this is the hard thing with history, is anything really unlikely to change? I mean, when I was on holiday and I was being told, don't come back, stay away. That was basically, stay away, Ricky, don't come back, after we triggered the Gibbs-White release clause. There was a feeling that there was something changing around Tottenham. The fact that the way they were operating the market, the fact they went after Kudos, proven Premier League player, they then gone and triggered the release clause of Morgan Gibbs-White. There was this feeling that, hold on a second, not only are we trying to go for proven Premier League players, but we're operating in the sense of Gibbs-White very quickly to get that deal done. And my worry is that in these last 8, 9, 10 days, there's been very little movement, it feels, elsewhere in terms of that urgency of trying to bring that caliber of players in. And my worry would be that in that time, all of the teams that, look, I don't expect Tottenham to win the league next season. I would like to think we can potentially push towards a top 8, a top 6 finish. Dare I say a top 4 if we get the players in we need.
Yeah.
But the clubs around us are making their moves early. They're bringing players in for pre-season. They're embedding them into their squad that are going to have changes. And I think history tells us that we are already chasing our tail. And we know with Tottenham, how many times have we gone into August and the latter part of the nature of that window coming to a close, needing to do deals? And it's just not a way you want to operate. So I hope things significantly change. And look, we are, like I say, going to talk about a deal now where hopefully it does appear work is going into that. I want to remind you, if you can, please like and subscribe to Last Word on Spurs. Please give a like and subscribe to Mitch Fretton, of course, Mitch on YouTube, on TikTok, that is sharing the screen with me. Like I said, we wish we could bring you more positive updates. Maybe this is one. Maybe this is more of a positive update we can bring you, and the fact that Tottenham are trying to identify a solution to that number 6 that we've been chasing for such a long time. We do understand Tottenham are now working on a deal actively to sign Joao Palhinha from Bayern Munich. Sources in Europe believe that there is a strong possibility that Spurs will be able to reach an agreement with Palhinha, the former Fulham midfielder, but they need to sell one of their existing players first in order to get this over the line. This will be the degree of frustration which comes to you at this point. Interest in Palhinha is not expected to be finalised in advance of the Asia tour. And that would mean that for Tottenham, it's a case where they need to, as I've said in that opening bit there, try and move players on to create space for the player himself. Now, as things stand at the moment, Mitch, you touched upon him, Yves Bissouma is led to believe to be the most likely candidate to depart the club, as he has now entered the final year of his contract at Spurs. He plays the exact same position. I mean, Spurs are not alone in the English clubs that are admiring the player. You know, we understand a deal for him would cost, in the region, we're led to believe, of around the £26 million mark. However, there has been suggestions over the last few days that a potential loan deal could be explored, maybe an option, obligation. It's been a player that really hasn't made that desired impact in Germany. He's had a number of injuries that have really disrupted his rhythm so far. But the key thing for this one, Mitch, is that he does have genuine Premier League experience. He's a player that essentially has got the ability on his day. And, you know, again, when you're looking at players that can make a fundamental difference to a team, proven Premier League, that is the boxes that Palhinha ticks. Would he be a player that would interest you?
It's certainly an interesting deal. I think it's sort of one of those ones that's kind of split the fan base a bit from what I've been reading and chatting to people about. I think he has a lot of good attributes, but he is perhaps also maybe a little bit limited in other areas, which has raised questions over whether he can be that number 6 that would really thrive in Thomas Frank's system. So I think in terms of the defensive side of his game, absolutely amazing. You know, I remember his last season at Fulham, he was fantastic. Obviously, Bayern Munich bought him for a reason. He is such a powerhouse, such a great tackler, so aggressive, and a profile I think that we need in the squad and don't have. In terms of when you think of the central midfielders we've not really got anyone that is like a bully type of character. And I think he would bring a certain level of strength to the midfield in that area. It's whether he can be the guy to progress the game on after that. It's then about, okay, so you've won the ball back off the opponent. What are you going to do with it now? And that's where people have concerns with the Palhinha deal. The other being that he's, I believe, 30 years old as well. So he's obviously not young. And I think my opinion on it is, if we could get him on a loan deal, I think that would be a smart bit of business. I think it's pretty obvious that our top target for that number 6 role is probably Adam Wharton from Palace, but they're not in any rush to sell him whatsoever. And I don't even think he wants to leave this summer either. So if we could have a stopgap, maybe for a year or two, maybe Palhinha, maybe Douglas Luiz, anyone else out there that we think could do a job, I think that would be smart. I think they could do a job to start with, and then we can revisit the long-term targets next summer when they're maybe more available, or who knows, someone else might have popped up or emerged in the next sort of 12 months that we might fancy instead.
I think it was quite interesting, Mitch, you brought up there about the age profile of Palhinha. I don't think those out there might not be aware of this, that it would mark the first time in almost a decade that for Tottenham a transfer fee would have been paid for an outfield player aged over 30 or older. The last time that happened, you have to go back all the way to 2017, and that's when Spurs bought striker Fernando Llorente from Swansea. Wow. It just shows you really that Tottenham don't normally move for players over the age of 30. And I think there's been suggestions, I know many might not want to hear this, that, I think Tottenham may have had an initial interest in Christian Norgard. I think when Arsenal came in, I think it made it politically difficult for Tottenham to be really involved in any kind of bid for the player himself. We know Frank, obviously, of course, has worked with Norgard. And I think the thing that gives me hope in relation to what I'm seeing, Mitch, is that at least it does feel that this is an area that we seem to understand needs to be addressed. But my worry again would be the fact that we're in a situation where we're almost in this kind of sell to buy scenario in relation to this area of the pitch. I think we've kind of got 5 players stocked up in that area where there's going to have to be some movement. I think, we spoke about this before, the fact that we heard the initial reports of Bentancur over the last kind of 12 months that there were suggestions he was going to sign a new contract. That has gone very, very quiet. The Bissouma situation, really, as we know with Bissouma, I think if we were seeing the Bissouma that was playing in Bilbao, I think we'd be all open to giving him another opportunity at Tottenham. But the thing is, we've seen him under Conte, we've seen him under Postecoglou. Funny enough, Frank actually name-checked him. I think when we beat Brentford, it was when he was reeling off all the names that, he was ravishing about at the time, or relishing about at the time. Bissouma was one of those. Do you think Frank will want to see Bissouma first in the whole of pre-season before making his judgment, or do you think he'll go off from what he's seen during his time at Tottenham and just feel Palhinha will be the better stopgap for, like you said, a year or two? Because I think it's unusual Tottenham do buy players for the here and now, but that's exactly what Tottenham need to do for that area of the pitch, it feels.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think Frank will probably want to have a look at him properly. I think the idea of obviously adding this Wickham game before Luton on Saturday and then the pre-season games over in Asia is Frank wants a real good look at the players that he has. But I don't think that will stop him from thinking that Bissouma is the obvious choice to ship out. Like you said, his contract is running down. If we can get a fee from him, then, I think it really is a no-brainer to cash in and then replace him. But this is our issue now as well. And clubs will be aware that we need to sell to buy in that area of the pitch. And it stalls everything for so long. So again, it pains me to say it, but it feels like it's going to be one that's going to drag on right to the end of the transfer window, even though I think we all come into the transfer window and into the summer agreeing that this number 6 defensive midfielder is arguably the most important position that we need to fill this summer. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. But I don't know. Is there an alternative in that central midfield? Do you think that we could sell? Maybe Bentancur's the other possible name, but I can't think of anyone else.
No, I can't. I mean, I think the club would ideally want to give Saar more opportunities. I think, again, he's had a bit of a stop-start last season or so. Again, he had an international tournament before we kicked off last season. I mean, as we know, Bergvall is seen as one for, a big part of Tottenham's future. It's really hard when you look at that midfield, really. Maddison, again, we've touched on Maddison. If we can find a more consistent Maddison, then what a player we've got on our hands. And again, I think that's why Frank is being brought in to see if he can get more consistency out of that midfield. So I have to also say to you, Mitch, I think in terms of the options in midfield, I think the one that you do feel is going to raise any kind of funds really probably is going to be Bissouma. And it won't be a huge amount because, like you said there, he's got less than a year to go on the contract. So it does feel really that Tottenham are in this situation where they're going to have to be really kind of open to maybe bids of a nation where they probably wouldn't want to have considered maybe 12 months ago. But the longer that contract kind of ticks away and expires and ticks down, the harder it is going to be to kind of get any massive fee for the player. It's going to be tricky, right? It's going to be very tricky. Yeah.
Very.
Yeah. The other player that I know has been linked, which again, I'll just get your take on it, Mitch, has been Douglas Luiz. We are hearing reports from Fabrizio Romano that suggests that Douglas Luiz does want to come back to the Premier League, and he's made that now his priority this summer. His relationship with Juventus is reportedly broken. He's definitely sure to leave. His agent is now in Italy. He's assessing all the options, but he has been categorically told by the player, he wants a Premier League move. I mean, Luis, does that one excite you, Mitch, in comparison to Palhinha? Do you have a preference on either?
I don't think I do, to be honest with you. I seen the majority of people on X say that they would much rather go for Douglas Luiz. And while I think he's another good option, he doesn't it's not a deal that blows me out of the water. Similar to the Palhinha one, it just feels like more of a stopgap. Maybe you could argue that Douglas Luiz is a bit more well-rounded, but you have to be careful with these things. Obviously, he's trying to force his way out of Juventus, which is maybe not the best of signs, especially after only being there for like a year. I think he struggled with injuries as well quite a lot in his career, although I think Palhinha has as well, to be honest. So, I don't know how much we can read into that, but he's one that I'd probably be more willing to do like a permanent transfer on if you wanted to add depth and revisit that situation again next year, because he's obviously a bit younger as well. But it's difficult because you don't watch them as much when they go abroad, unless you're an avid Serie A or Bundesliga supporter. Like Palhinha for Bayern didn't get many games. Douglas Luiz for Juve. I'm not actually sure how many minutes he got over in Italy last season, but the last season I saw him for Villa, he was very, very good, and I feel like we've been linked with him before as well.
Yeah, definitely have.
So
definitely
so
in the previous windows we have.
Yeah.
Yep.
So again, you wonder if that is maybe more the club pushing on, if we're interested, whether that would be more the club pushing on him, like you mentioned earlier, or whether that is someone that Thomas Frank would genuinely be interested in bringing in. But to be honest with you, Ricky, if we signed either one of those two by the end of the season, I don't think I'd have too many complaints, just because I feel like both of them would be an upgrade. I say that with gritted teeth on Bissouma. But I suggested that earlier, and a lot of people disagreed with me, and a lot of people said when Bissouma's on it, he's really, really good. But the issue is,
when is that? But
every 3, every 4, every 5 weeks.
I don't know what happened to Bissouma, Mitch. I mean, we saw, to be fair, kind of a reborn nature of him under Ange for the first 10 games, and I don't know what you think. I mean, I just don't know what happened from that Luton game onwards in the first season of Ange, where that sending off, he never really recovered from there. I mean, you could probably say he recovered in Bilbao, but I mean, look, you're getting in a season and more onwards from that moment. I mean, it's a real shame, because I think everyone was so excited when Bissouma came through the door. The problem is, I mean, I don't think we saw enough of the Brighton Bissouma. We've just not seen that Bissouma at Tottenham, because he used to play in such typical fashion against Tottenham. Played ever so well against us, right? I mean, every time he played against us, we thought, God, what a player. So delighted to sign him. It's just a real shame. We've never quite seen the best of him. And I suppose the only thing that you maybe touch on there is what maybe some fans feel is that kind of, what if Frank is the man to unlock the Bissouma that was at Brighton? And I suppose, again, it's kind of, do you give it another season? Do you give him another contract? Because you're in this situation now where, because there's less than 12 months to go, can you really gamble on that, Mitch? Can you gamble on the fact, can you give him another 6 months or so? Because then again, you're going to receive even more of a nominal fee when it ticks down to kind of 6 months left on his contract.
Well, that's the issue as well. And obviously, when you get to January at that point, he can start negotiating with other clubs. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of clubs would be interested in him. If they could get him, I don't even know what sort of fee we'd ask for, to be honest with him. But, if he's going for anywhere between 15 to 30 million quid, then I think that's still a decent deal for whoever would pick him up. But obviously, we've read that his preference is to stay in the Premier League, and that narrows down his options significantly, and it just makes it harder for us to sell him. And of course, he kind of has the power here now, because he can sit here and say, well, no, I'm not leaving, and then I'll find a new club next summer when I'm a free agent. So it's a really difficult situation in that position at the moment.
I do agree. Look, we're going to come on to another player that, to some degree, will maybe provide an element of frustration because of the nature of how this has worked out. We know it's been a player that Tottenham have been looking at throughout this summer transfer window so far, really since the appointment of Thomas Frank, and that's Yoan Wissa. We understand Wissa has now notified Brentford that he wants to join Newcastle and Newcastle only, and does not want to join either Forest or Tottenham, as Newcastle accelerate their discussion with Brentford over a deal and are hopeful it is going to reach a positive conclusion very, very soon. We understand the Magpies are now preparing a new package worth close to the £35 million mark, which could bring the two clubs closer. And when I refer to the two clubs, I'm referring to, of course, Brentford and Newcastle over an agreement. There was an opening bid rejected of around £25 million for the player that has, of course, scored, for those that aren't aware, 19 Premier League goals, no penalties involved in that, 19 non-Premier League goals, which is why he has seen a flurry of interest throughout the summer. He has left the pre-season camp of Brentford and returned back to London, where he is now waiting on completing a move elsewhere. We understand the player is very, very keen on Champions League football. There was a feeling that there was a real genuine degree of I wouldn't say convincing, but the players seem to maybe be open to the fact of looking to reunite with Thomas Frank at Tottenham. Again, I think the issue for Tottenham is it's trying to maybe generate the funds in the areas in order so they can move out players. I mean, dare I say, like a Richarlison, that many may feel would be one of the players that would be seen as an alternative to Wissa. I mean, for you, Mitch, is it a great loss that Wissa is going to come off our radar and will probably be a Newcastle player as things stand?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading through the comments. People are outraged at the idea that Wissa only wants to join Newcastle. To be honest with you, I think the situation is probably that Newcastle are pushing the hardest for Wissa, and he wants to leave Brentford. And out of the two, Spurs and Newcastle, if Newcastle really, really want him, then of course it's very easy to say that he only wants to join them, because it probably helps push a deal through quicker, to be honest with you. Is it a massive loss? I really like him. I really like Wissa as a player, and I feel like he could be someone that gives this Spurs squad an extra bit of depth that we're missing. I think he's an upgrade on Richarlison, if I'm being totally honest with you. 19, like the stats say it there on screen for those that can see it. 19 goals in the Premier League last season, plus 4 assists. You know, looking at nearly 25 goal contributions across a 38-game campaign for Brentford. No disrespect to Brentford, but I just think that is a phenomenal season, and I think he's one of the most underrated strikers in the Premier League. And I think obviously the Newcastle situation is a weirdly delicate one that's developing very quick with the Isak stuff and everything else that's going on up there. But I don't see how, if we were to sign him, anyone could really have too many complaints at it. So is it a massive loss? No, because there are probably a lot of other strikers out there that we could potentially pursue. I mean, we've probably got a big long list somewhere. And Wissa, at the end of the day, is 29 soon, so this is going to be the last big move you'd think of his career. I think the question would be at Spurs is, does Wissa come in and play a bit part role, or does he come in and replace Solanke? And I think that's where people are having more of the reservations, or do we play them both together? It's because I think they would work as quite a nice pair, to be honest. I think both hard workers, and having someone alongside Solanke, I think, would help him a lot, because he does a lot of that stuff up there in the final third himself. And I think it is hindering how many goals he's scored for us since joining. So maybe a two striker up top. God, when was the last time we saw Spurs play two up top together? Crouch and Defoe?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, can you believe we had a period where we had Berbatov, Defoe, Bent and Keane? I mean, we had days of having 4 strikers. I mean, it's like now we're in a situation where we've got one really in the matchday squad on a Saturday because we just can't keep Richarlison fit. I mean, what's your take on Richarlison's future, Mitch? That's gone very quiet in this last week or so, Richarlison. I mean, Frank has actually come out publicly after the Reading game and seems to suggest that, he's a player that really made a pivotal difference to Tottenham in the Europa League final, seeming to also suggest that maybe you'd like to take a look at him. I mean, what's your gauge on that for you with Richarlison, and what may end up with him in this window?
I think it's a classic case of really nice bloke, not what Tottenham need. I think I'm going to be a really harsh critic of him. As much as I really love his personality and how much he just adores the game of football, he's not been good enough for us. He's not been able to stay fit across the couple of years that he's been with us. What is it, 2 or 3 years now? And I just feel like it was a massive overpay. and we should cash in on him while there's still a bit of value left in him, to be honest, and replace him. I just feel like if we want to compete in these competitions, if we want to be able to go toe-to-toe with teams in the Champions League, and we know we're going to draw good teams in the Champions League with this new format, we need the quality in the squad to be able to actually score against them. And Solanke, while I think he's a really good player and I actually really highly rate him, he doesn't score enough goals. So who do we turn to then maybe make up for that? And at the moment, the alternative striker is Richarlison, and he doesn't score enough. So I just think, again, if there's a decent enough offer out there for him, it would be the most sensible decision to cash in on him. It's like the Bissouma stuff, though, mate, to be honest. I really don't think he wants to leave Richarlison. I think he's very aware of the World Cup next year, and he really wants to get into that Brazil squad.
Yep.
It's just whether staying at Spurs is the best move for him to be able to achieve that, or moving somewhere else. But realistically, if we were to sell Richarlison, are the buying club going to be a step up from Spurs, or are they going to be a step down from Spurs? So that's the risk he kind of might have to take, because he might have to take the step down, but be more of a main man for that particular club. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
I think the key also, Mitch, if you agree, I think what's really important is we don't leave ourselves in a situation where we're almost short up top, because I think with Solanke, we can't be in a situation where we have just the one striker. I did find Frank's comments actually quite fascinating after the game, or certainly, in that press conference ahead of the game, where he seems to suggest that really the wing area or the forward area isn't really one that we're looking at. I mean, I really hope maybe he's bluffing us, because I think for any Tottenham fan, when you're hearing the fact that Frank has been almost very clear on the case that we need to be able to compete on all four fronts, and he said we haven't done that since 2019, in his opinion. Daniel Levy's coming out saying we want to win the Premier League, we want to win the Champions League. I don't know how you can do that with having, with all due respect, a forward in Richarlison just can't keep him fit, and you can't then go into a Champions League season with having Solanke as being your only viable option and no backup. So I really hope we're being bluffed on that, and I really hope the club are looking at alternative other options. And when I say alternative other options, what I don't mean, just to be clear, is, with all due respect, Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Callum Wilson. I think that's what people seem to think when you say that. When we say about other alternative options, we mean proven Premier League players. I mean, I'm seeing even links from Man United to Vardy. I mean, would you have Vardy, Mitch, or would you not even go there?
No. That's not the direction we need to go in. Think about it. That statement, we want to win the Premier League, we want to win the Champions League, and then we go out and sign someone like Calvert-Lewin or Wilson or Jamie Vardy. I think people's heads would rightly explode if something like that would happen.
Especially if we don't get the number 6 and we don't get Gibbs-White. Everyone would definitely explode. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, obviously this window's not all about just players coming in. There's players coming out. We're going to squeeze in our last break of the show for our listeners and audio. We've got over 6,000 of you that are watching the show live. Thank you so much again for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. I'm joined by the wonderful Mitch Fretton. Please go and give Mitch a follow, a subscribe, of course, on his YouTube and his TikTok. And please keep liking and subscribing to Last Word on Spurs. Believe me, on my first week back in the UK, doing these daily transfer updates, we did want to bring you more positive news. But guys, maybe it's my fault for coming back. It's all gone very, very quiet, and we're not getting much in terms of incomings. But certainly in terms of outgoings, there could be a massive outgoing for Tottenham this summer. And that, of course, is in the form of our captain, Heung-min, where we understand Tottenham have now received an official offer from LAFC for our club captain. It's understood that Son is increasingly likely to leave Tottenham this summer and has that offer to join Los Angeles FC, in addition to renewed interest from clubs in Saudi Arabia. Now, key things to really pick up on here before I bring Mitch in. Son is contractually obliged to play in the pre-season friendly in Seoul next month, but could then depart after a decade at the club. Also worth noting, we're hearing suggestions over the last 24 hours. Son rejected a 4-year contract worth $25 million a year from the Saudi Arabian side, Al Ittihad, to stay at Spurs. While we understand discussions have taken place, Tottenham are adamant. They're telling the press at the moment no official bid has been made. It is understood, as I've said there, Son's situation, it's unlikely to be resolved until after the club's pre-season tour, in large because of the key player release clause in their summer trip to South Korea. And for those that aren't aware, which I found quite interesting only a couple of days ago, that was revealed, is that should Son miss out, should Son not feature in that tour of Korea, Spurs will would miss out on as much as 75% of their fee for playing in Seoul if Son is not part of the touring squad. So I don't know whether you agree, Mitch. I think one thing we can all guarantee, Sonny is going to definitely be on that plane, because there's no way Tottenham are going to miss out as much as 75% of the fee for not taking the player there. Can we just clear that up for starters? He's not going to go anywhere anytime soon, right?
No, absolutely not. That'll be a real late one. The Son stuff is, do you know what? It's actually quite sad. I was out before this and I was chatting to a few people about it, and it's sort of like that last member of that core group of players that we had under Poch that would sort of finally be leaving, and it's a really sad moment. You had the Vertonghen, Alderweireld, you had Dele Alli, Christian Eriksen, Harry Kane, and Heung-min Son. They're sort of like that group of players is who I sort of picture as the main guys for that really good Spurs Pochettino team.
We also got, I know you don't forget him, Mitch. We've got to probably throw Moussa Dembele in there.
Yeah, of course,
Moussa as well.
Obviously. Yeah. But Son's obviously that last guy left of that crop, and it's like, I don't know, it's almost like a parting of ways type scenario where I think a lot of Spurs will admit that it may be the right time to move him on, but they'd be equally fine with him staying for another year. But you're 100% right. There's no way he's not on that plane to Asia for this tour, because 75% of the revenue is crazy. But I mean, it's what a lot of people want to see for this, and regardless of what you think of it, Son brings a lot of money in for the club commercially, and you know, it might be quite nice for him. It might be like one last hurrah, I guess. Wins the trophy, goes home and does a pre-season tour with Spurs, with the club that he did it with, and then maybe that's it, and maybe he heads off to LA and has a reunion with Hugo Lloris. I actually think it would be quite nice for him, but I want to put it out into the air right now. When he does leave, shouts for a statue of that bloke outside the stadium, because what he's managed to achieve with us is, something we've been waiting nearly 20 years for. So, I don't know. It will be a sad moment, but I think ultimately the decision will be his. And maybe that's leaning towards leaving at the moment from what I've read anyway.
I'm unmuting. I'm not trying to. I'm back. On that point with regards to Son, I think also what is important to bring up at the moment is that the fact around the captaincy situation, Mitch, because the fact that Frank has said he is going to choose the captain himself, and the case that obviously it's not going to automatically be Heung-min Son does, of course, create that noise around the player, because if he was definitely staying, then surely you wouldn't be stripping the captaincy of a player that's been at the club for over 10 years, a decade, just lifted the European trophy. I would imagine has a huge amount of respect in the dressing room by the fact that, again, as we touch upon here, there's these suggestions, there's that noise around the player that is a genuine offer for the player. Do you find it now very difficult to see a world in which Heung-min Son will stay at the club, Mitch, based on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I just, from what Frank said, and I listened to that press conference very sort of closely, is that to me it sounds like Son is not going to get anywhere near as many minutes this season if he does stay. And I think Frank and Son would have had a conversation about that already. And it's whether I think it would be better for him to leave on a high. Like, nobody wants to see him stay, and then Thomas Frank comes out and said, yes, Son's no longer going to be captain of this football club. It's going to be Cuti Romero or whoever it may be that he's going to choose. Everything to me points towards him leaving. And I think a lot of other journalists are sort of pointing to that in their reports as well, saying that it's more likely than not that he does leave. If I had to choose, if they both were going to stay, I would give the captaincy to Romero anyway, just because I think he's a real leader on and off the pitch, and he leads by example, and he's that sort of guy. A lot of people don't agree with me on that for a number of different reasons, but that's fine. But at some point, we have to acknowledge and admit that we've got to go into this new era, another new era. Yes, I know.
I know.
And that includes Heung-min Son leaving the club. and it will be incredibly emotional, and he deserves a fantastic send-off and
Agreed.
to go with his head held high as the captain of the club who led us to our first piece of silverware in 17 years. It just makes too much sense to me.
Do you think, Mitch, on that basis, if we do let Sonny go, which again, at the moment, it does appear that it's more likely than ever, which we're hearing, his goal contribution last season, he's still, achieved over 20 GA, again, despite the fact that there was, maybe significantly less goals than what we would expect from Sonny, just the 11 over the course of the 46 appearances, 12 assists. Is that an area that if we are letting Son go for you, we've obviously brought Kudos in, do you feel that's an area Tell, of course, has come in and obviously signed permanently now and has expressed his love for the club and the fact that he's so happy to have joined? Do you feel with Sonny going, we still need then to go in that area and address that and bring in another high-profile player to replace Sonny in terms of the depth of the squad? What's your take on that for you?
Yeah, I 100% think we do. I know there's options out there. I know Matthias Tell can be that guy to eventually step up, but is he the guy to immediately step up? I'm not sure. I think he needs looking after and really has a lot of character building and development left to be had. Same can be said for Odeberg. Obviously, same can be said for the likes of Mikey Moore, etc. But I don't see how we could justify losing someone like Heung-min Son and not bringing in a good replacement. It's quite funny because I tweeted about this earlier. I said I tweeted out who would be your ideal replacement for Heung-min Son, and the overwhelming response was actually Rafael Leao from AC Milan, and I think that is the majority's opinion, is that we should go out and sign a superstar type player to replace him rather than put our faith in someone like Tell or Odeberg to really step into that role. And I tend to agree with them, to be honest. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. If Daniel Levy wants to win the Premier League, wants to win the Champions League, then you need the squad to compete. And if you lose someone like Son, who is still putting up decent numbers considering his age and, double digits for goals and assists across however many consecutive seasons for Spurs, that still needs replacing at the end of the day, even if it has dropped off in the last couple of years. And I really hope that whatever does happen, there's a plan in place for when he does go and getting someone in that can step into his role, because it'll be a big loss, not just on the pitch, but off it. Because everybody loves him and he's had such a big impact on the club during his time and during his career as well.
I think you said something key earlier, Mitch, that many people might, underestimate, how long he's been at the club for and that effect that it does have, over a decade. And like you said there, he's one of now the last, with Ben Davies, I think, part of that squad that started under Pochettino, where I think many felt a real deep connection once again with Tottenham, which Pochettino established with that squad. So I think, people get frustrated by maybe seeing Ben Davies still in a Spurs shirt. I think Ben's a good guy to have around the camp. Would I like to see Ben maybe transition into more of a coaching role and for his place in the squad to be given to, all due respect, the player that can come in and make a difference to the first team? Probably I would. No, just no disrespect to Ben. I just feel like, after having been here for over a decade, I think, I don't see in a horrible way to him, but would Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, City, United, would he still be a player in their squad after 10, 11 years? I'm not so sure. I know United's a bit of a basket case, but I'm not so sure if he would be given that game time there. But again, there's no doubt about it. Ben's a thoroughly good professional. He's worked, his backside off for Tottenham. He's stepped in at times where really maybe he shouldn't have done so. And, again, we'll have to see. But I think Sonny, like you said there, the key thing for me, Mitch, I just don't want Sonny to be in a situation where if he was to stay for this season and go into next season, those numbers were the same and they were to drop off even more, I would hate to see this Sonny. And I don't think Tottenham fans would do this. I think we're more classy than this. I mean, he's a legend at the club. We hope there's a statue for Sonny. I don't want to see a situation where almost there's that criticism of Son on a weekly basis saying he's past it, he's finished, he needs to leave the club. And I would love to see Son go out in the sunset on the back of the fact that he's holding the European trophy for us, of course, the Europa League being that abiding memory we hope for Sonny he'll get. So look, we'll keep an eye on that. Some other news in terms of potential outgoings. We have heard news that Alfie Devine is of huge amount of interest to Millwall. Of course, Alfie did feature in Spurs' first pre-season game of the season, of course, in that Reading win. Again, many seem to suggest that he looked quite good there. I mean, this is the kind of running theme, isn't it, Mitch? We've seen games in the past where, especially in pre-season, some of the younger players look quite good and they end up going out on loan, and that's kind of the end of it for that summer. I mean, Alfie Devine, there's been real high hopes with him for a long, long time. What's your gauge on Alfie Devine? Does he need another loan for you? What would you like to see Spurs do in terms of him this summer?
I mean, it's just the issue is like, how many loans can we send these guys on before we make a decision on them? Like, you know, I remember Alfie Devine was going out on loan like years ago when we were playing Marine in the FA Cup and everything else. It's like, at some point, you need to decide whether they're good enough to play in the first team or whether you cash in or send them out permanently. Alfie Devine maybe falls into that category, to be honest. Like, because you see it, right? I think you get a general consensus around the club and around the fan base on some of these players. And most people will say that Mikey Moore is someone that is getting or will get, had a bit last season, chances in the first team. I think everybody's under the impression that Jamie Donnelly is someone that very much could break into that first team for Spurs. Maybe Will Lancashire in the future as well. So he got Europa League minutes and stuff last year. But the Alfie Devine case, I remember initially so highly rated, so much hype around him. And ever since then, it's just died off. And now I think a lot of people probably forgot about him, to be honest. And you can't, unfortunately, give everyone the opportunity. So for me, and this is just my personal opinion, I wouldn't really be too sad to see us let him go and get a bit of cash for him, to be honest. It's just, he's not someone that I think is gonna, I don't want to be too harsh because you never know, and it might come back and bite me, but I don't think he's going to be someone that's going to develop into a really, really influential player that is going to make us like a top team. But, you know, also I don't watch him week in, week out, and when he is out on loan and stuff. So, you know.
Yeah. I agree. Well, listen, we're going to have to see. Let's finish on some news that I think definitely is going to stir some of the fan base, because I know at the moment, given the nature of our lack of activity so far, the fact of this kind of, we're leaving you with this news. I mean, I'll let you.
What this is.
I'll let you be the judge whether you see this as being a positive or a negative. We understand that Tottenham chairman Daniel Levy is set to be given the freedom of the City of London. Levy was nominated at a City of London meeting yesterday and is expected to receive this honour at a ceremony in Guildhall later this year. The Freedom of City Award, or Freedom of the City of London Award, is awarded to individuals as a way of paying tribute to their outstanding contribution to London or public life, or to celebrate a very significant achievement. Now, for those that aren't aware and obviously don't know Tottenham's history, Levy has been Spurs chairman since 2001, is by far the longest serving chairman in the Premier League. Of course, in May, Spurs ended that 17-year wait for a trophy, of course, winning in Bilbao. Again, keep your head on, guys, when I say this. He has overseen the building of the Spurs Stadium, which is considered one of the best sporting venues in the world. Of course, we know what it does, what it hosts, but we obviously saw the back of last season with Spurs struggling in the Premier League and the nature of the games week in, week out. Daniel Levy faced more increased pressure than ever from protests, of course, who called for his removal from the football club. Of course, this summer has seen the biggest shake-up so far in terms of at board level. We have seen, of course, the introduction of Vinay Venkateshan, which I know many hope is going to see significant change at the football club. And, of course, in the last interview we had with Daniel Levy, in a rare interview, Daniel Levy's last words to us was, from the outpouring of love from the parade, that it was incredible. We've just won a European trophy, but it's not enough. We want to win the Premier League. We want to win the Champions League. I'm not sure if he'll be given the freedom of the City of London from the Spurs fans, Mitch. It does feel, though, that the... how do I put this? I feel like there's a time account against Daniel Levy, especially this window, as to what Tottenham want to be. I know we had an interview recently with Henry Winter, who, again, that's kind of always been the question, what do Spurs want to be? I know there's that kind of 48-hour period where many felt the landscape was changing. I know there's been suggestions of course, they're going to be sizable investment, sponsorship coming into the club. Remember that stadium naming rights being one avenue where they can bring money into the football club. But look, the reality is, I've said this on many, many shows, you know, we did not set that expectation about the statement of around winning the Premier League, winning the Champions League. The reality is there was no time limit put on that. But automatically, when that is being said, when Thomas Frank says this group are winners and we want to carry that on, there is that pressure there, Mitch. So do you feel that by the end of this transfer window, and given where we are right now at the time of recording, and by the fact that at the moment it's only one high-profile signing through the door in the fact of Mohamed Kudus, that people are going to make their judgment very, very quickly in terms of what Tottenham want to be and whether Daniel Levy is still, I say, the right man to take the club forward. I know many people don't feel he's the right man to take the club forward. And look, we ourselves last season were part of that case where we were protesting for change for the football club. I think I've made my opinion on it very, very clear that for me, I still feel the way Spurs are currently structured, I don't feel there's been much changing with Tottenham. I don't. I do feel that if Tottenham are to really significantly push on, I feel there's going to be an even more fundamental change at board level to really see this club push on. I'm just not sure if that's going to happen with Daniel Levy being here. Mitch, what's your takeaway on the Freedom of London award that he will be collecting?
He's a very clever man. Let me make it very, very clear to anyone that might not have watched me before that my opinions on Daniel Levy and that whole side of things in the club are very, very similar to Ricky's. And you know, I'm all involved in that sort of stuff as well. But he's a very clever man in the sense of he knows how to buy himself a little bit more time with the fan base, and it's such a weird one because I think that Europa League trophy bought him a bit more time, and it was very easy for him to build on. Obviously, you play off the euphoria of that moment, of the fact that everybody's so jubilant and happy to have won something finally. You know, it's a smart move to then come out and say, yeah, this isn't enough for us. We want to do more. We want to win trophies regularly. We want to win the big trophies. And that's all well and good. But those of us that have followed Tottenham for a very long time now know that it's very easy to say things, but you have to follow it through. Otherwise, you're going to be, well, more so now than ever, you're going to be held accountable for it. And I am very glad to see people not giving Daniel Levy a free pass now just because we've won something. To be honest, the Freedom of London thing, it just is what it is. It's one of those things that it's just happened, and like it doesn't serve any purpose to me. Like, I'm sure he's very, very proud, and I'm sure his family are proud and whatever. But you know, it's just one of those. But in terms of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, I don't think it makes the slightest bit of difference to any single one of us fans, because what we want to see is Tottenham performing and winning and lifting silverware on a much more regular basis than we have been in the last 20 years. And I agree, we are currently still not making the changes necessary to be able to do that. It is, you know, the transfer window is a prime example of that. And he shot himself in the foot a little bit here. And again, this may not be entirely his fault, but with the Gibbs-White stuff, you know, I reckon he's seen that as a perfect opportunity to build a bit more rapport and a bit more support from the fan base. Boom, 55 million, Mohamed Kudus in. Fantastic. All right, let's drop 60 million immediately after on Morgan Gibbs-White. And then, to be honest with you, if that had happened, I think Spurs fans have a much more relaxed approach to the end of the transfer window. They have a much more relaxed approach going into a season. There's much more excitement about what Thomas Frank and this new Spurs squad are going to be able to achieve this season. But with these problems, ultimately it's going to get turned back around on Daniel Levy one way or another, whether he's done something wrong or not. And it's full circle. It's the same cycle all the time at the moment. Is, you know, people get angry, they begin to protest, they get upset. Something positive, in a sense, happens with Spurs. It all eases off and it dies off. And then slowly that sort of tension builds back up and people get angrier again. And that's kind of the phase that we're getting into now with this transfer window. And all it takes, right, is if we don't get the targets that we want and we start the season slowly under Thomas Frank, the frustration's right there again. The Europa League win is forgotten about because that's just what happens when the new season gets underway. And we're back to where we were. So, you know, ultimately, Ricky, more needs to be done, in my opinion.
Mitch, I'm in total agreement with you. More needs to be done. Let's hope we're not going to be kept waiting too long. I know, again, for many out there, they would have said, like you said there, Mitch, I think it's a case of moving early, decisively in the window. I think what doesn't help as well, Mitch, if you agree, is that when you're seeing close neighbours doing business early, bringing players through the door, ready to go on their respective pre-season tours. And the fact that we've only got the one through the line at the moment, and look, they're working, it appears, on that defensive midfielder we touched upon, Gibbs-White, again, we don't know, it's an illegal situation. It just feels that at the moment, like you said, there's more to be done. So look, we shall see. Mitch, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Remind everyone again where they can find the wonderful work you do for the Spurs community, because I say it's a time right now where we need cool heads, cool minds, because we've still got, what I think, another 39 days of this to run. How are we going to cope, Mitch? Where can people find you?
Oh, God. Is that really how long we've got left still?
I know.
Yeah, you guys can find me on YouTube, TikTok, etc. So if you want to see more of the kitchen, because I get a lot of comments about that being my background as a kitchen. I'm moving soon. I will have a nice background soon. But if you want to see, a bit more than me, YouTube's the main platform. I post videos every day on TikTok as well. But it's been a pleasure, Ricky. It's been a really, really nice change of pace to have a sort of one-on-one chat with you about things.
I just wish, Mitch, for all the Spurs fans out there, bless their hearts, that, were telling me, don't come back. It's all kicking off. I just wish we could present them with more right now. And I know, again, we try and get these updates out there for everybody just to give a little bit of an understanding of the things that are moving along slowly, and do appreciate things are not moving to the pace we want. But it does feel maybe day by day with the links we're getting with Palhinha, for example, it feels that there may be little incremental things that are being made. But as we know with Tottenham, it's never easy, Mitch. It's never easy, right? We're going to have to, as we know, go through the pain, because this is what we used to.
Yeah, I was going to say, we'll get there eventually. And then, you'll do a dozen of these shows, and then something will happen. Hopefully, touch wood, something will happen, and it will be all worth it in the end. That's the hope anyway.
We hope so. I know there's many out there who say, come on, Rick, let's be honest about it. Reality is, we've been here for 20 years under Renick. What really changes when we come out of a window? Are we ever really impressed? But we have to hope at some point that's going to change. And look, I think the most important thing for all of us is that Thomas Frank goes into the summer and into the start of the season with a squad that he feels is capable, in his words, of fighting on all four fronts. Mitch, as you've said, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much to the 6,500 up watching the show live. Thank you so much for your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. We'll be back when there's more news to bring to you. Keep liking, keep subscribing. Make sure you check Mitch out. As always, keep safe, keep well, and come on you Spurs.